Power and peace, black family. Power and peace, black family. It's your brother Patrick Lumumba, the Black Liberation Movement, Mississippi Black Liberation Movement. Glad to be with you all again today. Had a little technical difficulty. I apologize for the small delay, but I'm still learning this technology, and I'm still getting accustomed to the technology. But we're gonna get right into the program this week. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. We got an all-star lineup today. We got an all-star lineup today uh, for the Black Liberation Movement podcast. We have an all-star lineup, and we want to get right to it this week because we bouncing off of a historic weekend that we had this past weekend. A very historic weekend we had this past weekend. I want to be able to reflect back on that historic weekend and make you all understand the exact happenings that took place this particular weekend. It was very historic. We're going to reflect on it all throughout this hour of this conversation in this podcast. Now, what we want to do, like I said, power and peace to you all. Hotep, Habari Ghani, Assalamu alaikum, free the land, whatever greeting you consider to be a greeting of your choice, so be it. But we want to make sure that all black people, that are forward thinking black people, that are pragmatic black people, that are strong, courageous black people, that are intelligent black people, are tuned in today. So we're gonna ask that you go ahead on and share this broadcast. Go ahead on and subscribe to the YouTube page. We're trying to build this platform up so that we can get these powerful conversations out there to the masses of our people. So go ahead and share this broadcast with a friend. Tell them that the Black Liberation Movement is on, and you need to be tuned in. So today we want to bring um, to our attention some very powerful brothers that's on this podcast tonight. Very powerful brothers. And I want you all to hear from them and hear the profoundness of who they are and what they mean to our people, to our people. And without further ado, we're gonna introduce our Baba Kamal Kareem, who is a very constant with us. Baba Kamal Kareem is with us. He's the author of Pragmatic Nationalism. Pragmatic nationalism is a concept that we are pushing to actual pragmaticism in a practical application here in Mississippi. And he's also the lead counsel general of the Black Liberation Movement here in Mississippi. So I just want to introduce to you all Baba Kamal Kareem. Baba Kamal Kareem, give them a brief introduction of yourself and just give us a little bit today so that we can move on and get this very powerful conversation in my belly start.
Well, power, peace, and blessings to everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be on the Black Liberation broadcast one more time. Um, as we're on I like to use this word that you use so familiar, precipice. We're on
Yes,
the precipice of a unification and solidification of Black power in Mississippi again
yes,
and
sir.
all around the world. Let me just add and take note that things move in cycles. And if you are a student of history, you'll note that our people did not unify until we were in a war cycle or a poverty cycle or both. If you look at the circumstances surrounding going back as far as the Civil War with Martin Delany and Frederick Douglass, if you look at World War One with the Honorable Marcus Garvey, if you look at World War II with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, if you look at the Korean War, the Vietnam War with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And so we're on this precipice again where, this question is always asked among our people: how come Black people can't get together? Well, the simple answer to that is we believe that we have access. As long as we believe that we have access, then we operate and define ourselves in the white man's terms of individualism. and that makes us not unified. But let me just tell you something. And I just saw a report today. You know, the police departments all across the country are going to militarize. And the reason why they're going to militarize is because they're recruiting Marines. They're recruiting Marines. Why are they doing this? Because anytime America's economic infrastructure gets bad for white folks, then they turn that repression and oppression upon us.
No doubt. Let's hold you right there, Bobby, because we want to get these other gentlemen in so that the audience will understand who we have with us today. Because we have some brothers that's gonna complement the wisdom that you bring and what it is that we have with the Black Liberation Movement as our agenda press forward with Mississippi on the move and everything that we have going on with all those dynamics as well. So also with us we have, and I'm telling y'all better share this broadcast today because this is going to be a mighty powerful broadcast today because we have different elements of our community that's coming together and all of them working on the liberation front. And you need to share this because it's very powerful black men that's on this broadcast tonight. And we want to make sure that we get people to hear the concepts as they begin to come together because we on the precipice of building a nation. So with that being said, I want to bring our brother, I call him the scholar mathematician, um, the author of Histomathematics, our brother Akil Parker. So we want to bring Akil Parker to the platform. Thank you, brother Akil, for joining us today. I want you to give the people a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you do and how we came to even know each other. Just give us a brief introduction of who you are so that we can press forward because we're going to have a mighty conversation today.
Well, Patrick, peace to you and peace to everybody. You and peace to you, brother Kamal Kareem.
Peace to you as well.
And peace to everybody that's tuned in, that's listening. As far as the introduction goes, I'm a father of three, and I'm really just I'm a brother that teaches math, and I believe that math should really be a tool of Pan-African nationalism, and I believe that it has to be if we're gonna do be successful as some serious independent nation building. Because everything has to be calculated, everything has to be quantified, and not only that, but in terms of us being our children and even adults being able to think critically, mathematics is a tool that can be used in order to teach that organically, to teach that critical thinking among our people. So I just I do math tutoring and I create mathematical content on YouTube and using social media, and I'm working to meet the people where they are and then bring them to where we would like for more of our people to be, which is being more forward thinking and more progressive in terms of thinking about a nationalism of our own, but and using mathematics. That's the lane that I'm going in, because I'm trying to make a distinction. I'm not trying to get our people to understand mathematics just so that they can go get jobs working for white people in the STEM fields, because that's not gonna solve our true problems long term. That may solve the individual problems of some of our individual people, but that's not going to solve the problems for the collective.
Got you. Got you. Thank you for that, brother Akil. And we're going to come back to some points you just laid out because some people may think that what they got to do with nation building.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to come back and show them exactly how math plays into nation building and how it applies in our history as well as the people who we are. And I want to bring to you all, last but not least, our brother, powerful brother. I just had an opportunity to meet him in Natchez, Mississippi this weekend, but we had a number of conversations prior to getting there. This brother has shown exemplary character when it comes to standing on the forefront for our people and pushing with some hard power in the face of white supremacy and the age-old oppression that we suffer as a people. And he came into Mississippi like a whirlwind. And I really respect this brother, and I really seen a great character in this brother that I think should be exemplified. And I want to bring to you all now our brother, commander of the Elder Geronimo Pratt Gun Club, brother Nick Belston. Brother Nick.
I appreciate you, brother Patrick, brother Kamal, brother Akil. I
Yes,
appreciate
sir. Yes,
the
sir.
whole liberation movement, Mississippi on the move. I appreciate you having me on. Peace and black power to everybody that's listening. As brother Patrick said, Nick Bezel out of Elmer Geronimo Pratt, Pistol and Rifle Gun Club. Um, my two big things are the First and Second Amendment. I believe we have to um, exercise both of those rights as part of building blocks to nation building, because we have to understand, uh, we have to strategically move in this space to get to where we need to be. Um, Minister Malcolm had a great speech called uh, "The Ballad and the Bullet," and I believe in, the modern version of it is the pen and the pistol, meaning we need to make sure that we're educating ourselves and navigating the space and white supremacy to beat them in their own game using the pen. And if they infringe on those rights, then we have every opportunity to protect our First Amendment right and our ability to legislate ourselves using the Second Amendment. So I'm a big proponent of self defense. I say it all the time. I don't advocate violence, but I do advocate self defense and protection of our people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 100. 100. So I think we got the making for a mighty conversation here. Like I said, we have different aspects of the black community, the black nation here represented today, but we're going to mesh all of it together and we're going to have a very powerful conversation. And that's what I want to bring these men in on the conversation from their perspective, but we're going to bounce it off this weekend. Now, Nick was there. Baba Kamal, uh, uh, you were planning to be there, but you weren't able to be there to help us represent what it is that we've been pushing across this state that Nick Bezel picked up on. And I'm so glad that he did and asked. He said, Brother Patrick, he said, why not have a leg of that Mississippi on the Move town talk that you've been conducting across Mississippi in Natchez, Mississippi? In Natchez, Mississippi. We talking about going into these historic black townships and hashing out the history as it pertains to our struggle today and to implement the things that we are talking about that our people have seemed to forget about across the board. Now, what happened over the weekend, we took the cheering of the Ashe Academy and the educators along with us. And I think we probably were the only civic, I would call civic organization that was there. All the rest of them were Gun Club, Black Panthers, so on and so forth. And we are closely affiliated to those organizations, but we're more so of the civic development aspect. Okay. And I'm seeing now, Baba Kamal, Brother Akil, and Brother Nick, that it's got to be a merger of the two. We talk about 7 areas of battle, and we got to figure out how those areas of battle come together. And I've seen so many areas and examples of the military might that we have meshed with what it is that we have from the educational and political and civic aspects came together, and so many things that gleaned from this weekend, all from us going to the Civil Rights Museum and the children being exposed to a vast amount of Mississippi history. Like Brother Akil was having the conversation over the Zoom call with the children, breaking down the mathematics and the history of that. And we want to talk about that, Brother Akil. But going from the Civil Rights Museum, from the time we walked into there, and the curator, who was a black woman, who saw our children and knew that they were different, knew that they had something in them, and she approached us and she began to ask us questions. She said, "What is that you got on your chest, sir?" Talking about this eye. She said, "Do you know about that?" Yes, we do. We teach our children about that, which extended into a conversation and an invite from the curator of that museum, Sister Junior, that's running that museum down there, to come to the Black Liberation Movement Building Power Summit. From there, going to Brookhaven, Mississippi, where our brother Nick Bezel was on display with his gun club down there petitioning for the justice of D. Monterio Gibson and at the courthouse. going into the courthouse requesting the DA, the district attorney, give us answers to what's going on with the brother in his fight for justice. As white vigilantes were basically shooting at this brother trying to take his life. Leaving there to go to the town talk down in Natchez, Mississippi, to talk to a contingency of Natchezans about the things that were taking place in Natchez, to meet the elders and so on and so forth, and to leave Natchez, Mississippi, and have a gang organization summit in Jackson, Mississippi the next day, where we're trying to bring the street tribes together as one here in Mississippi and across the diaspora. And to leave there to my favorite part, the most fulfilling part of the whole journey of the whole weekend was to commemorate our ancestors at the Devil's Punch Bowl, where we had great renditions of history given to us by Baba Clifford Boxley, who I found to be wrote up profoundly in the book that I carry around. I call it a weapon of white lie destruction. In the book, We Will Shoot Back by Akinyele Umoja, who is on the picture of the promotion of this particular program with me and Brother Akil and Baba Kamal. So, but Baba Kamal, I just wanted you to come back and based on what I have told you in private conversation about what we're doing, what we did this weekend. What do you think about everything that took place? From what you know and from what I told you about.
Well, Commander Patrick, this is the time for these things to happen, as this reemergence of Black power in Mississippi, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. And from 1966, Greenwood, Kwame Ture, Mukasa Dada, or Willie Ricks, or Stokely Carmichael, if you will. But this is the reemergence. And in our conversation, we were talking about the Dogon people of Mali. And the Dogon people, they have a dance called the Sigi dance, that they do this every 65 years. And the reason why they do this every 65 years, it represents the reemergence of the original man in the earth, the retaking of the planet. They do it every 65 years whenever those of who are the chosen ones that are supposed to carry out this mission. White people use the terminology Messiah, but the term, it's not just limited to one man or one individual. It's a body of work. And so all the things, even though I was not there, all the things that have been reflective, with Mississippi on the Move, with us going to Holly Springs and Okolona and Indianola, Clarksdale, all of these different places, and the culmination of what happened. This is only the beginning and tapping in to the wisdom and knowledge that we have to disseminate in our people, so that we can raise them up, so that they can start protecting the sociological, biological, economic, and educational interests of the community. So all these things are destined to come to pass, but also with the Second Amendment march. And as I said when I opened up, they're militarizing the police. Anytime economics gets bad with white America, they start committing oppression and repression on our people. They have a history of it. As we see the Biden Kamala Harris administration fade away, because people are going to vote their pocketbooks, if I might be prophetic, and they're going to switch parties again. I don't know if Trump's coming back or not, but what I do know is coming is replacement theorists. And with replacement theorists comes oppression. With replacement theorists comes injustices in every aspect and every characteristics of our life, and the loss of that accessibility that we're supposed to have under so-called Democrats, moderates, and liberals. So as this accessibility disappears, as some of us wake up to realize that white people are just going to placate us, and that we're never going to be actually equal to whites in their inclusive world, that we're going to have to know ourselves and do something for ourselves, you'll see us come together and start to unify.
No doubt. So what you basically saying is a natural emergence that's supposed to be taking place
All the
right now.
ingredients. It's like baking a cake. You know,
Right.
Brother Nick Bezel, my brother over here teaching the mathematics. See, all of this is nation building dynamics. In order for Second Amendments to kick in for us, we must secure and build something to protect.
No doubt. No
We
doubt.
have to do that. We
No
have to
doubt.
build something to protect educationally, economically, socially, politically. And see, we're working on that now. And so surely we have to protect what we build.
No doubt. No doubt. Yes. So, Brother Akil, in this very oppressive state, and when I say state, I don't just mean the state and condition that black people are occurring. I also mean the state of Mississippi. You made some very valid points to our children and from a historical perspective. Our children got a chance to see a whole exhibition on Mega Evans. Uh, and I think that exhibition became more important to them based on the teachings that you had gave them a couple of weeks before. Mega Evans became more real because your whole concept of histomathematics, where you actually merge history with math to make both of them more interesting to our children, is phenomenal. So I just want to thank you, brother, for coming into not only my life, but the causation of the Black Liberation Movement and our children's life and what it is that you do. But I just wanted you to know that your teachings are very effective in what it is that we do with our children. Case in point, that visit to the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson and their interaction with the Mega Evers whole exhibition, and they were very profound in relating that to the curator. He was very interested in our children with the Ashe Academy. So I want you to kind of expound on histomathematics and what you understand about Mississippi, and kind of intrigue our people, with what it is that you know and understand.
So, yeah, I just and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to work with the young brothers and sisters on that weekend and that virtual lesson, and to talk about Mega Evers, who's one of my heroes, and also to like kind of look at him through a different lens. Well, not a different lens, but in a different way through with the use of mathematics. Because when I study people, these days and for a long time, when I'm reading history, I'm looking at it through a mathematical lens, just kind of as a consequence of being a math teacher and then becoming a math professor. So I'm kind of just trying to allow people to see things through my eyes, and hopefully that'll be helpful to them in terms of just gaining a better understanding of history. Because when you can quantify things, you really start to get into the details. And I think that one of my experiences with that as a student, um, which was one of the influences that caused me to expound upon this idea and try to develop this idea more and be more intentional about it, was reading a book by Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah, which
Mm.
was Neo-Colonialism. The title of this particular book, because he wrote several, but the title of this particular book was Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. So I mentioned that book because when I was reading that book some time ago, he wasn't just talking about, what the Europeans stole from the continent of Africa and from the different nations and from the different lands, but he was being very specific in terms of quantifying how much was taken. He was being very specific in terms of like what the time periods were in which, this amount of bauxite or this amount of tin or this amount of gold or this amount of rubber was taken from, Liberia, or when King Leopold had had our sisters and brothers down in the Congo, harvesting the rubber, and if they didn't, their hands were being cut off if they didn't meet their quotas and things like that. And those stories are important for our young people to know, not so that they can get, discouraged, but so that they can know that we're in a fight and that we've been in a fight. But it's even more important, I think, to know, like, okay, well, how many of us were murdered through that genocide? Similar to how the Ashkenazi Jews, they don't just say that, Hitler killed a bunch of us. they're able to be very specific in terms of a numerical quantity of how many, were murdered, because that kind of changes things. It makes things more specific. But back to Nkrumah, in this book, it's really like I consider it like a finance textbook, um, for those of like an African-centered background that aren't necessarily trying to just become assimilated into a neo-colonial capitalist structure, but in fact are trying to understand and learn about neo-colonial capitalist structures so that we can challenge them and work against them. So, different texts like that kind of influenced me to develop out Histomatics, which is, basically the teaching of history through the use of mathematics. And at the same time, it's the teaching of mathematics through the use of history.
Right.
So
Right.
it really works both ways. And my hope is that the lessons that the young people, for example, that they received on Mega Evers, they'll also be thinking about the mathematical practices that we did dealing with fractions and dealing with, addition and subtraction and different arithmetic that we had to do to get a better understanding, really, not just to get a better understanding of Mega Evers by trying to get a better understanding of the history of Mississippi in itself and the history of the United States. And even some of those, those politicians like I mentioned Theodore Bilbo was mentioned in that first chapter. James,
Django Easton.
People like that, the different organizations, the White Citizens Council, the Ku Klux Klan, and just how prevalent they were and how spread out they were. And I also think back to when I was in Mississippi, hanging out with you, Patrick, for the Black Liberation Movement Summit last September, and we were up in we were in Tunica, and we went past that plant, and being able to be on that actual land, because these are things that I've read about and studied about in school coming up, but being able to visualize an actual cotton field and actually pull some of the cotton myself, but then thinking about it in terms of how to teach that in terms of the numbers, because that's what I started thinking about. And I think that, that it becomes even more meaningful when you start talking about like how much cotton, because it's one thing to say that our people pick cotton, which is important for young people to know and even for adults to know. But then I think they'll know it even better when you start to get into the numbers and you start to get into the pounds and the ounces and how long this was going on and the different rates and like how much cotton was being harvested on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly, annual basis, and even what the price of cotton was and how the price may have fluctuated based on different conditions and whatnot. Because then we get an even better understanding, and then we start to really see how really vicious and horrific, the chattel slavery system was. From that standpoint, because we're becoming very, very specific, and we're really unpacking this experience that our ancestors had. So I think we can relate to a better. And again, not for the purpose of having our children be discouraged, which will, I think, leads a lot of people into just this desire to assimilate, because they start to believe that the problem is their blackness. And in fact, like Bobby Wright and others have told us, that our problem is not our blackness. Our problem is the psychopathic nature of those that are oppressing us because we're black. So that's the actual problem. So, and these are conversations that have to be had as well. But even thinking about it that way is really a mathematical approach, because it could be claimed that that's a result of critical thinking. Because on the surface level, if somebody's not thinking critically, they may just resort to this idea that I'm being oppressed because I'm black, so therefore blackness is the problem. But in fact, you as the oppressed are not the problem. The oppressor, the actor, the one that's being aggressive, they are the actual problem. So these are things that we have to know, and that our young people have to be able to think about, and we have to have conversations with them about that. So those types of conversations are what Histomatics is all about. Talking about these historical experiences and these different historical narratives, but becoming very, very specific about the impact by using quantitative reasoning, by using numbers, so that we can really get a serious of what really happened and what still is currently happening. And not only that, but we can then forecast what will happen in the future based on using mathematical formulas.
Right. Great. Great. So, so our topic today, and I know we 30 minutes into the program, and we didn't announce the topic, but it's appropriate. So the topic today is Mississippi culture, economics, politics. What's the next move? What is the next move? So Baba Kamal and Brother Akil and Brother Nick, he was having some problems. He should be able to come back on soon. So we'll have him back on. But let's do this. Let's look at the culture aspect. Uh, Akil, you alluded to King Leopold and various white racist mentalities and people who have decimated our people and exploited our people. That happened in Africa. So, Brother Baba Kamal, that mindset of white supremacy also transferred into the Western Hemisphere. You know, I remember very vividly a white minister right here in Mississippi, in Senatobia, came into my place of business because he was monitoring the activity of the Black Liberation Movement and some of the things that we were doing. And he developed this relationship with me on an intellectual level. He bought me this book. This will interest you, Brother Kill. He bought me this book called The Right Hand of God. Okay? And what it was talking about the experience of chattel slavery from a white perspective. And it was talking about how economically incentivized the whole world became because of cotton. Cotton. And it talked about a slave quota. Glad to have you back, Brother Nick. I'm glad you're back. Glad you got settled. But it was talking about something called a slave's quota. Okay. And that was the expectation of the slave to pick so much cotton on a daily basis. And how that quota continued to rise. That quota never went down. You know, the master was never satisfied with a slave production. You know, he said, "Hey, look, I need 2 bales of cotton from each one of y'all today." I'm putting it in my own word. But when that slave, when our brothers and sisters, I don't like to refer to them as slaves, but when they produced that, master wasn't satisfied. The quota went up. So, oh, you did that? So the quota goes up. I'm not satisfied. Tomorrow you can do this. Okay, so the quota kept going up and it kept going up and it kept going up until our brothers and sisters, foreparents and ancestors were doing astronomical, superhuman feats that transferred into astronomical wealth for our oppressors, you know, who are today the the manipulators and exploiters of our people. Now, the realization of that, you know, in the throes of that, we have a place like Natchez, Mississippi. I mean, come on, man. You know, I stood over that bluff and looked over that bluff with 20,000 of our women and children starved to death, you know, were diseased in situations. And I felt that, you know, and I felt that. And to bring all that back into perspective, Brother Akil, you talking about that cotton field that we stood in. And you being a brother from, you know, Philadelphia and all, and we've been knowing each other for years, just that experience standing in that cotton field. I mean, I had that experience standing over that bluff, you know, Brother Nick, standing over that bluff, looking out and just reflecting on the horror, you know, that our people endured at the hands of these oppressors, as Baba Coates Boxley would tell us these stories. But Baba Kamal, that plantation economy, you know, and Mississippi is the most reflective state still today. And we're going to get into the brain drain that's taking place, Brother Akil. That plantation economy, Baba Kamal, and you have a brother that's a state representative, you know, Brother Kabir. You know, having politicians that understand that economic dynamic, you know, that we suffer. You know, it's a reason why we in vast numbers, Brother Bezel, Nick, in the delta of Mississippi, still to this day in the delta, and we so impoverished, but we controlling politics, but we really not handling our business, in the recovery aspect, and having politicians that's consequential and understand the historic ramification that we suffered through that plantation economy, where all the wealth went to the planet elites, and we still living in the throes of that today. So it's very important that we understand that. Bob Kamal, could you just speak to that?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to something that Brother Bezel said that was very, very key when he brought up uh, Brother Malcolm's speech, the ballot and the bullet, and then he put it in modern terms. He said the pen and the pistol. And this is one component that has to be used to protect our sociological, biological, economic, and total community interests. And the reason why I say this is, yes, my brother, he is in about his third term in the Mississippi House of Representatives. We all were in politics when we came to Mississippi after we had left the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But let me just say this, that politically, Black people are not making any gains politically in Mississippi in terms of being outnumbered and outvoted in the legislature, outnumbered and outvoted. And what has happened due to benign neglect, politicians who have a Black face have been taking over Black towns, Black communities, and have been holding offices elected by Black people. But because we have an ignorant electorate, all we have is a Black face doing white bidding.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is supposed to equal economics, of which Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation. And the 1.2 million Black people that live in Mississippi are the poorest. So, in me speaking to that, was some of the solutions? Well, one of the first writings of the mystery of the temple from the original man from the beginning of the earth was, number one, know thyself. Number one. And by us knowing ourselves, we'll do for self. Economic initiatives, all this land that we have around here, being able to feed our people. Ashe Academy, Sankofa principles, Mayat principles, teaching our people, elevating our people to who they are ethnic wise in their identity, being and going beyond just being Black, and securing education, not training to work for someone else. My beloved brothers like Brother Akil over here, but we have to develop education. Education was the first battleground where the hijackings took place many, many centuries ago, many, many thousands of years ago. It was where the hijackings took place with Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Paragus, and all these thieves burning down our wisdom and knowledge at Alexander the Great, and denying us of being the founders of not only the knowledge of the universe, but of the sciences, the arts, engineering, so on and so forth. So education is key so that we will not define our phenomena in the white man's terms. Black people that try to define themselves in white man's terms are suffering a menticide. They're suffering a menticide. They're not themselves. So to put this in layman's terms, when you see our brothers and sisters with fake eyeballs and hair that grows off of horses' behinds, and shamed of their color, and shamed of the texture of their hair, and shamed to be unapologetically from Africa, that's a menticide. So it takes education to correct these things. But then also politically, to join in with the economics, all of the little hamlets and that's around all of these farmlands in the countryside in Mississippi, we can make these Black townships. We can make these. We can create some more Black Wall Streets, some more Rosewoods, some more Elaine, Arkansas, right here in Mississippi. They have all kind of villages and hamlets. Some of them have 800 people. Some of them have 1,500 people back up in the hills. Teach them how to incorporate how to form their own self-governance, and how to do for the knowledge of themselves and teach them who they are. This is the plan, such as was orchestrated back during in the 60s when Kwame Ture and Mukasa Dada, they went through counties in Mississippi and over in Lowndes County, Alabama, so on and so forth, and they started organizing the people. See, right now, we do a lot of mobilizing. But what we do when we mobilize is when we go to town, we stay in their hotels, we buy their gas, we eat their food. We actually are economic benefit just mobilizing. But when we actually organize, when we have takeaways, when we go into a town, and I'm not saying this has nothing to do with what occurred this weekend, but what I'm saying is, the March on Washington, the million more, the million women, the remarch and all this. We're like a dog chasing its tail around in a circle. But when we organize, then we can start talking about having our own political party. We can start making a difference. We can start running candidates. We don't have a black governor. Well, let's run a black man for governor. He might not win, but he sure is going to raise issue to what's going on with black people in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things, in contrast, as my brother said, critical thinking, of which I totally agree with, because we need every component. We need what we did in Natchez. We need those town talks. We need the agricultural initiatives. We need self-defense. We need character quality. And we need education and not training. Not training. Mm-hmm. See, people going to public schools, they being trained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm going to yield with that.
Yeah. So, no doubt, Bob, because that was very profound. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of clean that thing up and make us understand, on a very, very, very profound level. So, I'm just still reflecting. I see you, Nick. I'm still reflecting on this weekend. So go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off what he was just saying. I think a lot of us, when I came down there, I said, man, I want some land in Mississippi. And just to piggyback, I think what we have to do is have a reverse of the Great Migration. And I think brothers and sisters who are away from Mississippi, like my family, and I drove past the sign, and I've never been there before. My family's from Lexington, Mississippi. I've never been there. The next time I come, I'm going to go to the grave sites of my ancestors that are there. But I look at it like we have a lot of brothers and sisters who work remotely right now. The pandemic brought a lot of that into play. And these brothers and sisters make decent money. So to have the reverse of the Great Migration, to bring Black people who are historically from places like Mississippi, or, their families are from there, to come back, to make purchases, to make investments, especially when they have the means because they work remotely, right? They have the means to get up and move, to come back into Mississippi, and to have a groundswell of our people there and politically be educated. Just because we have, I call them blackface white supremacists, or the police chief in Brookhaven, right? The Black man that's really doing the bidding of white people.
Exactly.
But what we need is our people to come back who are aware and politically sound, to come back and start building up our cities. And these are the people that will be, the council people, the alder people, commissioners, the state reps, the U.S. reps, the governor. And this is what we have to do. And we have to continue, again, in all respect, we have to rebuild our own Black Wall Streets, our own Greenwood districts, our own Rosewoods, our own South Sides of Chicago, how it used to be. Like, this is what we have to do. And we need to make sure, I think a lot of it comes from fear because our people are comfortable where they're at. But you have to understand, this is a way that we could put, and I talked about it over the weekend, being able to police each other, being able to have our own people in place, all the elected officials. We could control the state of Mississippi if we just had faith in one another. And we have to get over that fear. And we have to go ahead and challenge ourselves, because if we really want liberation, if we really want a land of our own, that's really the way that we're going to get it. And The manuscript was written through the Republic of New Africa. Like it tells you what we need to do. And come back into these places to elect our own officials, to govern our own land. But I think the biggest thing is trust and fear. Once we get over that fear and we develop that trust, I don't think there's anything that can stop us from governing ourselves in the southeastern United States.
Right. Thank you, Brother Nick, because they're very profound. I'm glad you're saying what you're saying. Because when we got back from the sojourn, I'm gonna call it my sojourn, because it was very pivotal for me. You know, it made me understand, like I was telling you, Baba Kamal, in conversation yesterday, you know, that we were on the right track. You know, what we're doing with Mississippi on the Move and what we have been doing the last 6 years with the Black Liberation Movement, Building Power Summits, what we've been doing with the Agriculture Initiative, what we've been doing with the Ashe Academy, what we've been doing with the $1 a day black tax that people seem to forget. They want to call themselves members of the Black Liberation Movement, but they're not paying that goddamn tax. You need to pay that black tax that we have incorporated into being a member of the Black Liberation Movement so that we can continue these things. But one of the brothers, I think it was General Ghazi, brother Nick, he gave a voice message in the revolutionary group that we were in, and he said this right here. And I want Baba Kamal and Brother Akil to hear this. He said, and this is what I took away from it. He said, "I saw something in Mississippi. You know, I don't know what General Ghazi is at, but he said I saw something in Mississippi. He said I got a new look and idea about Mississippi for what I used to have." And that took him coming here. It took him coming here, okay? Because I go all over the nation, and I know the sentiments that's expressed about Mississippi. When I tell black people I'm from Mississippi, they gasp. You know, seriously, they gasp. Like, really? You know? But General Ghazi said he's seen resources in Mississippi. And this was interesting to me because Baba Kamal and myself, we go all over the state and we talk about, you know, the various resources here in Mississippi as far as land and different things like this. But this was interesting what the brother said. The brother said, I saw a people resource. He said, I saw a people resource. And I'll never forget when Baba, Professor James Small came here and we had personal conversation about the people in Mississippi. He said, retain their Africanness more so than any other people in the Western Hemisphere. That was interesting to me. I didn't say that. Baba Professor James Small said that. So I have to think about that. What is he saying? See, when I go to New York, when I go to Chicago, when I go to these different places, I see black people who have been assimilated. You know, they have bought into the white man idea. They black, but they really have bought into the white man idea. In that book back there, The Devil You Know, The Devil We Know, Charles Blow talks about what you're talking about, Brother Nick, in the reverse migration process. The stronghold of our people, and I heard the Bible say down there when he was talking, he said that a greater teacher than himself said that our African ancestors left, you know, the soul of black people in the South. I'm not saying this because I'm here. You know, I heard Brother Zulu Shabazz, and I see he just chimed in, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz. He just chimed in. I heard him say he's from Mississippi. Now I'm hearing you say, Nick, you from Mississippi. Brother, all from the north, when they come down to the summit, you know, they say they from Chicago. I said, no, you just were born in Chicago. You know, you third, fourth, fifth generation removed Mississippi. That's what you are. And it's a reason. When you do the history, like my brother Akil is talking about, that math, that's the math add up. You know, and I want to read this so that we can understand. And I'm going to let, you know, you all have a conversation because you all are the reason why we're on here. I done lost it, but what it was speaking to, and I can basically say it, it was speaking to when we went in the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson. It was talking about from a certain period of time, Bob, Brother Akil, you may know the exact time, Bob, you may know just from your whole vast knowledge, the exact years. But it's a period of time, something took place in the South called Northern Fever. And Sister Crystal, if you got any of that, put it up on the screen if you got any of that information that we get. Northern Fever. And what it was black people saying, we got to get up out of here. You know, and we got to go make a life for ourselves. We got to get away from this cracker. You know, this thick cloak of racism. You know that we suffering, and we got to go make a life. So a lot of black people in Groves, it said from a certain period of time, over 1 million black people left Mississippi. I mean, you're talking about whole communities disappearing. You know, 1 million black people, Baba Kamal, left Mississippi. Mississippi. So, and were dispersed all throughout the country. So, you know, we got all these people. I was meeting them at the hotel. Didn't have nothing to do with why we were down there, Nick.
Most of us went to Chicago.
Yeah, most of us went to Chicago.
Yeah, but it was 7 million in total that left the South. Yeah. But the 1.2 million, at least 1 million went to the south side of Chicago.
Right. And I'm gonna tell you this, and then I'm done. But I mean, think about those numbers at that particular time. But the thing about it, even after that, Mississippi is still the blackest state, ratio to proportion to any other state in the United States right now. So that people resource that General Garcia, whichever one of the generals is, I don't know which one it was, but whichever one it was, he spoke very profound to my soul. He says a people resource there because the rawness of the people here in Mississippi. See, we're not going to disavow your intelligence from Philadelphia, but Akil, we're going to invite it. You know, we said, what the hell do you govern in Philadelphia? You know, a block, a concrete jungle. What do you govern there? So what we can offer you is some land. And that's what I'm telling the brothers in the gun club, the commanders. You know, Brother Khalid said, Africa is not my home, Africa is my throne. Okay? The whole world is our home. Africa is our throne, though. And what I'm saying to the brothers, because I got economic plan, you know, as far as land, investment opportunity. Mississippi don't have to be your home, but it can be your base. It can be where you invest. It can be your retreat. It can be something that you want to guard. You see what I'm saying? With that military might, something we can invest in the land. We got whole agriculture programs here that we got to talk about. I want to talk about that with the gun club. My own family got 400 acres of land right down in Panola County. And we talking about an investment plan. You understand, Bob Kamal? We've been talking about that. Mm-hmm. So, Brother Akil, I want to bring you back into the conversation, brother. 1 million black people leaving Mississippi. Still, we retain the political numbers to resituate ourselves. I mean, seriously, resituate ourselves. I was just talking to a lady that was calling me about the food that we're growing because she opened up a grocery store in Webb, Mississippi. You know, I done bought trucks, you know, to distribute the stuff that we grow. This is in future term. We need investors. So, Akil, what do you think about 1 million black people leaving Mississippi? What do you think about the reverse migration process that can take place and us actually building a nation state? You don't have to live here. Invest here, though. What do you think about that?
I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, I think it speaks to, you know, what, like somebody mentioned earlier, like the Republic of New Africa, what, you know, that idea. I think it kind of brings that idea back into the forefront. And, you know, it enables us to, like, you know, take advantage of the strength of numbers if they're organized, they're organized, because I think that's key. And also, I think we got to be clear what the goal would be and have explicit conversations about, you know, independent nation building, and not just kind of what I see in some spaces, like, you know, with people talking about, you know, going back to Africa. It's like this kind of like scramble for Africa, because you have a lot of people that are really just trying to take the place of Europeans and Arabs in Africa and try to exploit, you know, the land over there. So, you know, I would hope that, you know, beforehand we have some explicit conversations about not just like black people from the north or from wherever, just saying like, you know, let's go down and let's exploit Mississippi and, you know, try to buy up all the real estate, buy up all the land, you know, so we can just kind of replace the white folks and kind of, you know, it'll be black people exploiting the black people. that in that land. But hopefully we can be on some type of accord where we're like, we're doing this for the collective. We're doing this for the community. Like we're trying to, take ownership of this so that our future generations can thrive as a collective, not as just a few individuals. Like how this kind of like Jay-Z mentality with what's better than one black billionaire too, right? So if you got a couple black billionaires that kind of own everything and then they're just like exploiting everybody else, then the system itself has not changed at all. You just got a different face on it. It's like Amos Wilson. Amos Wilson said, like a lot of our young people that end up going to college is the goal of the college, maybe not of the young people or their family, but the goal of the college is to train and create these black faces of white power. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. But generally speaking, that's a great idea. I think that's very important, for us to be investing in places like Mississippi. Like last September was my first time ever coming to Mississippi, and I think that and it may be also an issue of us kind of differentiating between price and value, because if we say that like Mississippi may be based on economic terms and economic metrics, Mississippi may be the poorest state in the United States of America, but in terms of the value of the land, I think the land is beautiful, and I think that once it's invested in, then those economic metrics start to change, because economics is very arbitrary anyway. Because really, when we talk about like what something is worth or the cost, that really is just a function of kind of in this nation or in this world, it becomes a function of this particular group of white men behind closed doors deciding what defines valuable. Like, how do we define what is valuable? So with all that land and that beautiful space, and then even like the connection to our ancestors, and like what somebody else also alluded to about the retention of African heritage and African culture in a place like Mississippi, that's something that we can't even, that's invaluable. You can't put a price on that.
But one of the things that if I may, I want to go back to the statement that was made by Professor Smalls when he said that Mississippians that he noticed retain their Africanness. It's a reason for that. It's been said long ago that the gospel shall be preached to the poor. Well, poor people don't really are not really attracted to the professional elite. Say, professional elite, there's a lot of blacks that have become professional elites, and they totally have lost their total identity, even their blackness, and they want to be like white folks. By Mississippi being so disproportionately poor, these are working class people, and working class people who come out of cotton fields and whatnot, they're the closest thing to the earth. And because they're the closest thing to the earth, during the course of our history and our involvement in inclusion, they were looked over in terms of being professional elites. Your average so-called high-class Mississippian was either a preacher. These are the ones that so-called had status. Either a preacher, a deacon, an undertaker, or a barber, or a beautician. And basically, it's still like that today. What's being pushed now in this generation, because we're trending, is professional elitism. And the danger of professional elitism, it will have you feeling like working for the white man and having a title and having a cushy job like at IBM or Toyota or somewhere like that is better than pushing a cart of ice and you selling it for a dime. And this is what we're suffering from now. We have to pull our intellect out of that mindset of professional elitism and get them into the spirit of entrepreneurship. It is more honor in making a dime for yourself than somebody giving you $100 at the end of the week. And I'm just paraphrasing that, and with all of this land and whatnot, we associate and one of the dangers is we equate all of this land and farming, we equate it with slavery. And we have to get out of that mindset. We have to understand that this is how we eat, and we have to teach the value of the land and destroy that fear of that regression back to slavery, because you know, in times past, with all the sharecroppers that you had in Mississippi on working for somebody else's place, and at the end of the year when they finish figuring up everything, that you owe the landowner of the land more than what you did before you moved on his land to farm it. So it was the Great Migration that people left. They left in the middle of the night. You know, because they were so in debt going to these places and whatnot, trying to find jobs, Cadillac assembly line, meat packing places, different things like that. But now they're coming back. And as they come back, as brother said, we have to make sure and ensure that these professional elites, I say that again, don't take advantage of the situation, but that everything that we do, that it benefits the collective.
Right. Right. So again, Baba, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that spiel, Baba, brother Akil, and I appreciate you expounding on it and bringing my idea to fruition, brother Nick. You know, but you know, just going back to Professor Small, and what he told me, he said culture, economics, politics. We got to get our culture right. You know, and once we get our culture right, you know, then we understand how our economics supposed to go. I mean, it ain't no secret. And then we begin to politically bind that, you know, to create the quality of life that we deserve as a people in the wake of all this historic deprivation, so on and so forth. But before we begin to wind this conversation down, you know, we're gonna go a little bit over an hour this time. We ain't gonna worry about that. We want to talk about, you know, the backlash. What I think is the backlash of this plantation economy that it took place, you know, over so long. It's a backlash, and it's something that white people are suffering, you know, right now. They announcing it. They're announcing it. It's on the news. It was on the news last week. And brother Akil, you texted me today and told me that you're looking into it more in depth. But this brain drain, and I don't know if you heard about it or not, brother Nick. But me and Baba Kamal have discussed it, and Akil looked at it. But these white people hollering pretty loud right now. They calling it a brain drain. And what it's suggesting is that, you know, they putting over $1 billion into the major universities, white major universities in Mississippi. That's Ole Miss, that's Mississippi State, that's Southern Miss. You know, those are the white major universities. They put over $1 billion into these every year. But for the last 3 years, 50% of the white graduates is leaving the state. You know, and I'm trying to look at that, you know, and try to hash out what that really is. You know, what's really happening. Are the white children of the elitists, you know, not seeing value in the infrastructure that has been built? And how does that weigh in as an opportunity for us? You know, what do you think about that, Akil? You looked at the articles today and you studied. What do you think about it?
So a couple of things that come to mind is that I think, you know, I think that a lot of white people. Well, I mean, like again, I'm not from Mississippi, but just based on being from the north or more northern state, because I grew up in Baltimore, and technically Maryland is in the south, but it's right on the border of the Mason-Dixon line, so it's really like a northern state kind of. But from the propaganda that I learned about Mississippi, having never been there as a child, Mississippi was always advertised as a place that we would never want to go to. Wasn't until I went there and I saw how beautiful some of the land was, that I saw some of the potential of it. But that wasn't until I was a grown man, like a year ago. So I'd imagine a lot of that. I don't know if a lot of that propaganda is probably prevalent among residents, and I don't know. I'm assuming that a lot of people would go to college. A lot of people would be born and raised in Mississippi, and go to college not for the purpose of building or helping to maintain a state like Mississippi, but for the specific purpose of to be able to have some type of passport to actually leave Mississippi. That's what my assumption would be. So I think that the people that are like doing this research, I think they have to take that into consideration. But really, from doing the research on that essay that I was reading about this concept, it really becomes again hystematics. They're getting into the dollars and cents, because what they're saying is, if the politicians are saying, well, if we're taking the tax dollars from the tax base and we're using them to invest in the public universities, we want to get a return on that investment. Just like with real estate investing, we need ROI, or just like with stocks or cryptocurrency or anything, you want a return on your investment. So if we're taking tax dollars and we're, investing in these public universities, we're providing grant money to students, we're providing even loans to students that have to be paid back, but it's still, we're fronting them the money so they can go get this formal education, and then they're taking that education and then going off to Atlanta, they're going out to California, they're going up to Chicago, going to these other, maybe even if they just go to Alabama or Louisiana, if then they want to stay in the South, they're still leaving Mississippi. So now they're thinking like, well, should we make this investment? So essentially, it kind of reminds me of something that I think, I want to talk about this too if I have time, but something that I think that the Black community needs to do more of. It reminds me of that Plies song, I ran off on the plug twice, right? And I think the Black community, that's something that we have to do, because a lot of our education, our formal education, becomes a neo-colonial education where they're making an investment in the schools that they control, that they allow us to attend, with the expressed hope and the goal that we will be, like I said earlier, as Amos Wilson said, I'm just paraphrasing him, we will become the black face of white power. And a lot of us end up taking that investment in our education, that financial investment, we go get the formal education, we get the degrees, and then we've been kind of socialized into the logic of neocolonialism and of assimilationism, and then we end up just giving them that good return on their investment. So what I advocate is for, again, having these explicit conversations with young people, and then having the young people think about, again, like the Ply song, run off on the plug. Take that money, let them invest that money, but you kind of, be intentional about taking the education and then using it to do something like build up your community in Mississippi. Like how me and you, Patrick, we talked about how the young brothers had never even conceptualized. They were studying civil engineering in college, but they had never even conceptualized the idea of using their civil engineering knowledge and skill set to build up a town in Mississippi, an all-black town in Mississippi. So what I say is we start having these conversations with more young people, like young people at like the Ashe Academy, for example, which I know is already taking place. Those conversations are already taking place. So that way, when they get the opportunity to go to one of like a state school in Mississippi, and and instead of them going to work for the establishment or one of these larger corporations controlled by white people or Asians or Arabs or whoever, they then say, okay, I'm going to take the education, I'm going to use it to build up my own community. And I think that may be a beneficial way to even frame what it is that's taking place, because that's essentially what a lot of these white kids are doing that go to the University of Mississippi, and some of these other schools that were mentioned in some of the data that was in that article that I forwarded to you. But again, see, these Europeans are doing what they're supposed to do. They're thinking about Mississippi as a nation. They're thinking of themselves as a political sovereignty. Right. And we're taking tax dollars and we're investing in education for the future generations. But these people, the students that are supposed to be the future generations, are not giving us a return on the investment. They're taking the money. They're taking the money, using the money, getting the education, and then they're leaving and going other places. And then other states or other political sovereign areas are benefiting from that tax base, those tax dollars. So now they have a decision to make. They gotta figure out a way to incentivize staying in Mississippi. And I think there's a program called what's it called? It's called I wrote the name. Oh, stay in the SIP. It's called Stay in the SIP Fellowship. Yeah, Stay in the SIP Fellowship, which again it incentivizes students staying in Mississippi after they graduate. So hopefully, they'll be able to retain, because you're looking at some places where only 50% of those that graduated with a degree from some of these colleges are actually staying. What Mississippi is doing in large part is kind of funding supplying labor. They're supplying labor for other parts of the country. And I also be interested to see like if 50% stay and the other 50% is leaving, like where are they going? Like what's the breakdown? Like what going to? where they're going the most. So what they might want to do, and I'm sure they're probably doing this research, because again, we got to, all this stuff has to be analyzed, and that's what they do in their think tanks. So they're probably, having conversations with some of those government entities in those states saying, listen, can we come up with some type of agreement? Because you're taking all our students. Like, we paid for those students to get educated, so now they're going and becoming part of your tax base now. So we put the money up, and now you're benefiting from it financially. And I think that, like, in terms of education, we got to always follow the money and look at the dollars and cents of it. And again, that's why with systematics, what is support that is mathematics. We see mathematics as a tool of nation building, because we have to be thinking in this way so we can even have these conversations. Because without a thought process grounded in mathematics, this conversation can't even be had. So that's why I'm a strong advocate, as you've already said, of our children being introduced to this way of thinking very early and very often. So those are just my thoughts about it, about the brain drain in Mississippi. But I definitely think our children need to run off on the plug. You gotta take that money, because it's. I mean, we're old reparations anyway, so this is only a drop in the bucket in comparison to the reparations that were actually owed. But take that money, get that education, and then commit themselves to using that intelligence and that knowledge and those faculties and that skill set to build up the Black community, because that's not what those people have in mind when they provide those scholarships and those grants. They want for our children to become the Black face of white power and to help maintain the system, just like those neo-colonial leaders over there in the continent of Africa, and how we've had neo-colonial leaders on the continent and in the Caribbean and South America and wherever Black people are.
Right. Yeah. So that's very interesting, right there, brother Akil, running off on the plug. But Baba Kamal and Nick, it's something that he said that really, got me thinking, man. and I'm literally at war with white supremacy. I'm gonna announce that I'm at war with white supremacy for real. And I understand the aspect of civil development, civic development. Is a war. It's just as much as exemplified that we're at war as brother Nick with the gun and pushing the hard power aspect. There's just as much of an identification and exemplification of we being at war when we begin to organize like that. But the thing of what I want to point out is that white people identify this problem, and guess what? They already moving to the solution. You said, brother Akil, and I think he froze up, but they said they launched a program called Stay in the SIP. And I'm just talking about how quick they identify the problem, announce it, and respond. The response, and John Henry Clark said, we ain't really responding to nothing. We ain't respond to transatlantic slave trade. We ain't respond to the institutional slavery. We ain't respond to Jim Crow. We ain't responding. These people are already hashing out a response, Baba Kamal.
Well, to piggyback on that, it's a statistical fact that by the year 2027, that more than 50% of your college populations will be Black people. I said something then, because what they're trying to prevent is already too late. You see, just by virtue of the fact of our very presence of our melanin, that's the intimidation of why you have this flight. Because once your young white people, once they get educated and acclimated, those who have a vision, who are visionary, they see that they cannot overcome this Black man coming up, this Black woman coming up. Those that really know. Now, my wife, she's been an educator for quite some time. She's been a doctor at Mississippi State for the last almost 30 years. And we were discussing this, but this is not only in Mississippi, this is all across the country. This is why education is so important, so that we won't be flipped in these institutions of higher learning to be trained to work for the white man, to work for somebody else, because we're going to be the majority in all the institutions of higher learning. We're going to become the majority. By 2055, we're going to become the majority in America. Period. So this is the great fear, the flight. Now the type of culture and society in Mississippi, very overt races, denying things of equity, so on and so forth. It costs money to support those systems. It costs money to serve injustice. It costs money to keep lies going. Okay, so these systems, they're faltering. The children see it, and they're taking the higher ground.
Well, let me say this then, Bob Kamal, and I want to bring some maybe some just something different to this conversation because Akil said something, and I want to know that you grasp this concept. You talking about more us becoming more educated, us becoming the majority number of the people that being educated in the country, but if we don't do what Akil's talking about, run off on the plug, if we don't run off on the plug, ain't we just gonna become, uh a vast number of educated black people that continue to do the master's will?
Well, this is why I say that education is the battleground. If you heard what I said, it's essential. Education, black education, is essential. It's
Black
essential.
education.
Yes.
Black education.
Yeah. See, because because education, that's the only way that there's education. Other than that, you just being trained.
That's training, right? But when we saying that it's gonna be more educated people, we talking about formal education, right?
Yeah, because it's going to be a great attempt. It's going to be a great attempt to turn black people. The final attempt is going to be, the final battlefront is going to be education, to turn them away from the knowledge of themselves and to keep them from having what you call combined operation, and to continue having them work for the white folk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why it's so crucial. It's so very, very crucial for us to set up these independent African schools.
Mm-hmm. Right. Nick, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when he said it has to be combined, I 100% agree with that. Not only do we need formal black education, but I say this all the time, the worst thing that happened to us was integration. Because again, we can read the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, and it kind of talks about that. And remember, that was decades prior. But what ended up happening with integration, black people felt they made it because now they could go to these white universities, they could get these white office jobs. And so the biggest trick that played on us was that we can get an education and go work in these offices. But guess what we lost? We lost the ability to manufacture, right? To have these skilled positions. We were the we were the builders, we were the masons, and we lost out on a lot of these skills. When you go to these construction sites, you only see these Mexicans and these white boys working construction sites. So when we talk about Mississippi being a nation state of our own, we have to get back to being able to build. We back to being able to be electricians, to be plumbers, to be carpenters, to be masons, roofers, auto mechanics. Like, we need all of this. Farmers, to become self-sufficient and self-reliant. In integration killed that, and we have to get back to it. Now, we still need the formal education part of it, but we also need the trades as well. And so we have to have a delicate balance. And it goes back to what I said earlier. When we have people participating in the reverse migration, the people who will be coming in would be more of the financial side of, but we have to educate within. We have to build from within. And the young brothers and sisters who are in Mississippi, like the ones that you work with your academy, Brother Patrick, those are some great young men that I met this past weekend. But we have to, and when I was there last month, one of the things that I really pushed were to get the trades put back into the high schools. Remember, they pulled the trades out, but so we have to get the trades put back into the school. We have to get those trades. So if you go to school, high school, by the time you graduate, if you stick with the same trade, you get it certified through the universities to tie the universities into what we were talking about. You had the universities take some of that $1 billion and go put them back into these high schools. That way, you incentivize keeping these people in Mississippi, black people, black laborers in Mississippi to help build our nation state. So that's how you incentivize it. If them white people want to leave, they want to go live in them cosmopolitan, they want to come here to Austin or go to Nashville, wherever else they want to go because that's hip for them, then let them leave. But you only pay people, pay off their education for the ones who stay. So what does that look like? You go to school here and you in Mississippi and you stay in Mississippi for so many years, the government pays your loans off. If you get that education and you leave, then you have to pay it off. But once those programs are in place, we have to encourage our children to either get these trade programs while they're in high school so they can get out and work for themselves in helping our people, or they go off to college and they get that education and they stay and come back and be in the community. They'll be the teachers or the doctors, lawyers, so on and so forth, politicians that are on code, politicians who are on code, let me say that.
Right. Right. Thank you, brother Nick. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, what we trying to do with the Ashe Academy and educators like Sister Crystal and brother Professor Carlton Jones and brother Akil Parker and the elder barbers that we have, so many profound elders. We trying to build a curriculum around the things that our ancestors have already taught us. In our culture center, we have them all around the wall. Mama Fannie Lou Hamer right here. Baba Malcolm X. Baba Chuck Wade Lumumba back here. These people have said some very profound things that we can build curriculums around. Baba Carter G. Woodson. Listen to what Baba Carter G. Woodson said that echoes in the language that we're speaking right now. This is what Baba Carter G. Woodson said. And you just said it, Baba Kamal. Baba Carter G. Woodson said in Miseducation of the Negro, he said, in the schools of business administration, Negroes are trained exclusively in the psychology and economics of Wall Street and are therefore made to despise the opportunities of running ice wagons, pushing banana carts, selling peanuts among their own people. Foreigners who have not studied economics but have studied Negroes take up this business and grow rich. I made a post and I got slammed for it. And I said, black women talking about self-care being, adding these cosmetics on, so on and so forth, and it's incentivizing, people of other races. It's economically incentivized, but you calling it self-care, and it's economically incentivizing women of other races. When you buying that hair that came off a horse butt or whatever it come from, when you putting those aesthetics on, but you calling it self-care. What happened to yoga being self-care? What happened to meditation being self-care? What happened to learning how to take care of family being self-care? I got slammed for that, but it's these inappropriate things that we doing, and we not hashing out a curriculum, brother Akil, and I love what you're doing with history mathematics. I love what we doing with the Ashe Academy, but really seriously hashing out a curriculum that we teaching our kids. And I see the twinkle in their eye, when they stood with you, brother Nick Belzer, as you had the gun and the Sambo, the turners in, and I wanted to take that photo up because I wanted to show our people how our guns protect our children. The education meeting the military aspect and security and what the point that we're willing to go to make sure that we take care of these young minds that's gonna forge out our future. Yes, sir, brother Akil. We coming up with ideas like concept engineering. That conversation had never left me when I had that premonition and that dream about standing in front of young black civil engineers, and I asked them, "Would you like to build a black township in Mississippi?" And those civil engineers said, "Why would we want to do that?" And they black. Why would we want to build a black town? You see? So, I'm just trying to see how do we continue to inspire, the idea of building for ourselves. If we're gonna build a nation, that's why I kind of pull it back, brother Nick, to Mississippi. What I can basically affect. I can't build, the food that we grow. We can't feed a nation, but I can feed cold water. I guarantee you that. I can feed cold water the food we grow. So if I connect with various black farmers across these 82 states, and we begin to network that, then we create the distribution aspect of what we growing. Why we can't come up with a whole commerce around that food that we growing right here in Mississippi? I go all up in Chicago. They want Mississippi watermelons. I'm not ashamed of watermelon. Hell, Akil Parker said that's our national fruit. White folks made us ashamed of that because black people were able to actually incentivize themselves growing watermelon. Because couldn't nobody grow them like us. That's an African fruit. So we got to go back and create curriculums around, making ourselves proud of who we are and what it is that we can inherently do that can't nobody else on the planet do. And that's why I'm glad that I had this conversation tonight with the elder Baba General Kamal Kareem, my brother, scholar, mathematician, historian, Akil Parker, and my brother that's on the front line. Man, I'm so glad that I met you, brother Nick Belzer. And anybody that's against my brother Nick Belzer, I'm against them. I'm just gonna tell you just like that. And I love y'all, brother. And I just want to get a parting shot from each one of y'all tonight as we close this thing out, starting with you, Baba Kamal.
As I said again, you'll see in the next upcoming weeks and months the ingredients that will go into the solidification of our unification process, starting in America and all around the world, particularly in Mississippi. As this economy worsens, as people become more homeless, as the housing market bubble will burst, as foodstuffs get lesser and lesser on the shelves, the price of gas maintains a steady pace, and inflation is scheduled to continue into recession. It's at least projected for the next 36 months. You will see repression from the white community, replacement theorists, more and more of them will spring up. Entitlement programs will be cut to the bone, and the police forces around this country will be more militarized. All that will be a cake to bake in an oven for liberation and freedom of our black people.
I love that cake. I love that cake.
And guess what? The crumb got in it, the cake got in it.
That's right. Brother Akil.
So I would just leave you with, I just want us as a community and as a collective to begin to, instead of running from mathematics, to start to run towards it. Start to run towards mathematics. Start to embrace it, especially with our children, because like our children notice if we have any type of reservations about mathematics and embracing it, our children can sense it, even if we don't explicitly come out and say it, and tell them, even though a lot of us sometimes we do tell our children, like, how we never performed well in math, or we didn't like math when we were in school. I think we have to, if we begin to embrace mathematics as a tool for liberation, which we should see that it is, because mathematics is definitely a tool for oppression.
No doubt.
Mathematics is manipulated and utilized to plan out our oppression, because there's nothing willy-nilly that those that are oppressing us are doing. They're not doing this by the seat of their pants. They're in think tanks. They're hiring mathematicians. They're hiring engineers. They're hiring, high-level thinkers that are using all types of formulas to be able to maintain control over individuals, over groups, over institutions, and they're planning long-term for the future, for the next 100 years, next 500 years, and all of that requires math. So if mathematics we see can be a tool for oppression, it definitely can be a tool for liberation, because we have to first be able to understand what is being done to us and what will be done to us. And then we have to be able to counter that with our own mathematics and our own calculations, so we're not always, playing catch up and reacting and trying to defend ourselves at the last minute. So but it all starts with us embracing mathematics and thinking about it differently, as a tool, that we can embrace and run to, instead of something that we try to avoid and run from.
Without a doubt. And I really, you spoke powerfully to me then, man. I want our children to feel that they have to compete for this earth. You know, feel that they have to compete for this earth, not a job, compete for this earth. I think that if Baba Ajabu said something out there on Grove Park, brother Nick, he said that black woman, if she tell us to go fight, guess what we gonna do? We gonna go fight. If that black woman tell us to go fight, I know it's in the march. It was when we was marching through the streets of Natchez, Baba Kamal, and I never even took place in an armed demonstration or whatever. But I had some brothers out there, Babu Amalaway and brother Nick uh, and the other generals and Militia Baz. They were out there, and I marched with them, and I began to see, white people coming out on their balconies and like, what in the hell going on here? And I started to feel the power. There wasn't no begging ass shit. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. We went out there begging nobody, but it was this black woman that was right in front of me. And I had met her out of Oklahoma. She with the El Geronimo Platt Gun Club. She began to take over the tone. Yeah, you had Malik Shabazz up front. Yeah, you had these generals up front, but it was the black woman who took over the tone of that march. And she began to chant the thing that we really needed to hear, that really touched our soul. That sister, you know what I'm saying? She took over the tone of that march. And Brother Steve Harris, I was just reliving that moment. But Brother Steve Harris took the initiative to bring his flag back to her and tell her to go to the front of the line and lead us in this march because her spirit was so strong. And it's the African proverb that says, it's the African woman that called for war. So what I'm simply saying is that when our children are taught to not just get a job, see, we got so many of these black women that have been weaponized by white supremacy, and they become white supremacists themselves, but if they get back to that Africano womanism, if they get back to that cultural aspect, we can really compete, and our children will have a different mentality and value for their own life, and we'll begin to compete for this earth. But it takes that black woman to start speaking life back into her. So that's just something I thought about when you said that. Pardon shots, brother Nick.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I first and foremost want to say thank you to the people of Mississippi for even having us come down this past weekend, for accepting us, for bringing us in. It's like you said, we're all from Mississippi, basically, but just to embrace us and the hospitality we received over this past weekend. So salute to everybody, from the great state of Mississippi for having us. It's two things that I want to make sure I leave everybody with. The first thing is we have to protect one another. That's first and foremost. Whether we're talking, nation building, having our own land and property, whether we talk about reparations, no matter what it is, no matter what we get, receive, or take on our own, none of it is going to matter if we can't protect it. So we make sure that we're trained, and we have to make sure that we're protecting one another, because nobody's coming to save us. We have to understand that. Like, if we don't do it for each other, it's not going to get done. Nobody's coming in to save the black man, the black woman, or the black child. We have to do it ourselves. And so my second part to that is that we have to start believing in one another and trusting one another. All this division and hatred that goes on, attacking one another, we'll never get to the ultimate goal by doing that. But what I do know is for us that are on code, that are on the same page, that want to see liberation and freedom for our people, that we have to continue to work together and make that dream become a reality and have our own, and not worry about anyone else. And so for Mississippi in particular, I got a lot of love for Mississippi. Whatever it takes for us to get the job done, Brother Patrick, whatever you need from my organization, we're there for you. We want land there. We want to invest in Mississippi, and I'm sure the conversations we had will be a lot more going forward to make sure that we get to the ultimate goal of a nation state of our own, regardless of how we get there, um, and to one day be able to sit with you, brother, and say we did it. So
No doubt. That's spirit. That's power. Do we have imagination? Can we imagine a nation? Baba Shabaka Africa said we have to reimagine ourselves. Baba Kamal, thank you for teaching me. Brother Akil, thank you for being my brother. Brother Nick, thank you for everything that you brought to Mississippi and the inspiration that you gave me and those children that was under your guide and your leadership this weekend. To all three of you, brothers, I appreciate you all from my soul. I love you all. Let's stand together. Let's fight together. We will win together. Thank you all for chiming in this week to the Black Liberation Movement Building Power podcast. Donate to that Cash App, BLM MS, and also subscribe to our YouTube. So thank you all for chiming in this week. We'll see you next week at 7 o'clock. Peace and power.
Peace.